Have you ever had a brilliant idea, a really critical project, or maybe even just a simple email to write, but you find yourself completely stuck? You want it to be perfect, right? But that very desire, that drive to excel, it actually leads you to not do it at all. Well, that right there, that's the perfectionist paradox. And in this explainer, we are going to unpack exactly how this cycle works and, way more importantly, how you can break free from it.
So, where do we start? Here's our game plan for today. We're going to kick things off by defining the trap itself. Then we'll get into the psychology that really drives it. After that, we'll uncover the hidden costs, introduce some powerful strategies to break the cycle, and finally, we'll talk about how to reframe our entire approach to achievement.
All right, first up, let's explore this core conflict. It's this super frustrating loop that so many of us, especially high achievers, entrepreneurs, and creative people, find ourselves caught in. I mean, does this sound familiar? You've got a task. You know exactly what needs to get done, but the sheer weight of getting it perfect makes starting feel, well, impossible. So what do? You organize, you research, you strategize, you do literally everything but the actual work.
And you know what? There's a formal name for that feeling of being stuck. This isn't just you being lazy or undisciplined. It is a recognized psychological pattern. The fear of not being perfect leads to procrastination, and that delay just cranks up the pressure to be perfect when you finally do start. It is a truly vicious feedback loop. And this concept right here, it's basically the engine that drives the whole cycle. Think about it. If you give yourself an infinite amount of time to perfect something, that task is going to take an infinite amount of time. The quest for perfect has no natural finish line, so without a firm deadline, procrastination just becomes the default. So, what is actually happening inside our minds when we do this? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the psychology that keeps this pattern running on repeat. Okay, so the crucial point here is that this isn't about healthy striving or just having high standards. No, clinical perfectionism is when your entire sense of self-worth gets all tangled up in meeting these impossibly high self-imposed goals, even when it's clearly hurting you. And this spiral, it happens step by step. First, you set a bar that's basically unreachable. Then, the fear of not clearing that bar makes you delay and avoid the task. Next up, the harsh self-criticism for procrastinating, which only reinforces that core, really damaging belief that you are only as good as your last achievement. And these cognitive biases, well, they're the mental traps that keep that spiral spinning. You start engaging in black or white thinking, where anything less than 100% is seen as a total failure. You overgeneralize, letting one tiny mistake define your entire worth. And you selectively focus only on the flaws, completely ignoring everything you actually did right. But this isn't just a mental game we're playing. Let's look at the real-world fallout, because the pursuit of perfect has some tangible and honestly pretty damaging consequences. Let's start with a hard number. A study in the Journal of Business Research found this really stark connection between perfectionism and performance. Get this. Companies led by executives who were identified as perfectionistic showed growth rates that were 23% slower than their peers. That is a huge impact. And here's exactly how that happens. It often disguises itself as quality control, but it's really a productivity killer. It's the product that's never quite ready to launch, the strategy that's always waiting for just one more piece of data, or the job role that sits empty for months. And while you're busy perfecting, your competitors are out there capturing market share. And the costs go far beyond the balance sheet. This relentless pressure is a direct path to anxiety, depression, relationship issues, and just complete and total burnout. It takes a really heavy toll on our overall well-being. Okay, so we've clearly defined the problem. It's a powerful cycle with some really serious costs. The big question, of course, is how in the world do we break it? Let's dive into the toolkit of evidence-based strategies that can actually help. The very first step, and maybe the most important, is a fundamental mindset shift. It's all about replacing that harsh inner critic with self-compassion. Research consistently shows that self-criticism just leads to fear and avoidance. Self-compassion, on the other hand, which really just means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a friend who's struggling, is a far more powerful and sustainable motivator. Let's look at a real-world example from a case study to see this in action. This is Sarah, a junior physician. Before treatment, a staggering 75% of her entire sense of self-worth was tied to her performance at work. This made her incredibly vulnerable. Any professional setback felt like a catastrophic personal failure. Now, look at the change after therapy. Her self-worth is so much more diversified. Work is still important, of course, but now it's balanced by relationships, hobbies, and even rest. And the result? She built a much more resilient sense of self. A failure in one area no longer threatened her entire identity. Now for a powerful, practical tool you can use immediately. It's called time boxing. Instead of working on a task until it's done, you give it a fixed amount of time, say 45 minutes. When that timer goes off, you stop, period. This forces a shift from a goal of perfection to a goal of making progress within a set constraint. It's a game changer. Here's another fantastic tool, the 80-20 framework. Perfectionists often get paralyzed because they're seeking 100% certainty. This framework just flips that script. It's built on the idea that final 20% of information often costs you 80% of your time. So instead, the goal is to get to good enough, take action, and then iterate based on real-world feedback. So let's bring all of this together now. It's time to reframe our ultimate goal, moving away from a paralyzing impossible ideal and toward a much more dynamic and effective way of working and living. And this right here, this is the key takeaway. Breaking this cycle is not about accepting sloppy or mediocre work. Not at all. It's about shifting to what researchers call adaptive perfectionism. You still have high standards, but your focus is on progress, on iteration, and on continuous improvement, not on achieving a flawless outcome on the very first try. I just love this quote because it gets right to the heart of the paradox. We think perfectionism is a shield that protects us from failure and criticism. But in reality, it's an incredibly heavy weight that keeps us from ever truly taking a risk, being creative, and just putting our work out into the world. So, I am going to leave you with the challenge. What's that one thing you've been stalling on, waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan? Your mission is to take one small, imperfect step today. Because progress, not perfection, is how great things truly get done. Thanks for joining me.